On this prequel episode, we've got patron shoutouts, we're learning about steampunk, and previewing Mortal Engines. Hello, and welcome back, after quite a long little break, to This Film Was Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. We're in the new studio. It's all mostly set up, 90%. Doing a preview episode. Thank you for sticking with us over this hiatus. It feels like it's been forever since we did an episode.
I know, it feels like it's been 8 million years.
It's been 3 weeks, I guess, technically, kind of, but yeah. Only really like one episode, like one main episode we missed, but man, it feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got lots of stuff to talk about this week. We got some new patrons. I think that'll be that will be our first thing. I think I got all of them. Because like I went back and looked at the dates. The last prequel episode came out on the 22nd, and we had a patron on the 22nd, so I included them here in case they weren't.
I think that's correct.
Pretty sure that would be accurate.
I'm pretty sure I looked like it was like the day the episode came out, right? Yeah. Then that would be right.
Yeah, because that we would have recorded it the day before.
Yes.
So, and then the last patron before that was like several weeks, so we should have been fine. So let's get to our new patrons. We have at the $5 level, and this was the person who joined on January 22nd, which was our last prequel episode, Joseph A. Rogers. I don't remember the names. Is that the Newberry level? Or the
5, yeah.
Or is that the other one? What's the other one?
I don't know.
I remember one of them's the Newberry and one of them's the Academy Award. I remember the Academy Award and one of them's the Newberry. I just don't remember which one. And then one's the other.
I think Newberry is the $2 one.
Yeah.
And
it's another book award.
Is,
or no, it's the Hugo.
It's the Hugo, yeah.
You're the Hugo level. I forgot. Yep, there you go. So Joseph A. Rogers, thank you for supporting us. And then our other new patrons, we have 3 at the $15 Academy Award level. You're only going to get one shout out this week and not in the recurring segment here coming up in a second. But they are Shelby Suderman, super fan of the show. We hear from her almost every week. She reads along a lot of the books and watches along almost every movie and has a lot of great content and feedback on the old social media. So we appreciate you jumping on. And we also have Corey supporting us for $15 a month and Gratch. Just Gratch. And just Corey. So thank you to all of our new patrons. It's 4 of you since we last did a prequel episode. Just the biggest of kudos, the biggest of thanks. And we hope you enjoy your bonus content and your other perks that you're getting. Getting back to our Academy Award winner patrons, the recurring shout out you get every prequel episode. First up, we've got Mr. Nobody. That's your name every time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Second up, we have, and this is the person who changes their name pretty much every time, Brad Pitt doesn't deserve an Oscar for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen that either.
I can't judge.
So I'm not going to comment.
But I will take your word for it. I was disappointed that I think he beat out in the Golden Globes. Daniel Craig was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and I believe Brad Pitt beat him out for the Golden Globe. I think. And I was disappointed about that. Now, Daniel Craig was not nominated for Knives Out for the Oscars, so he beat out like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and a bunch of just other people in movies that I didn't see this year, so didn't really care. But I was disappointed in the Golden Globes. And then our final $15 patron, Alina Doletkolova. Thank you, all of you, for being so great and supporting us. We love you very much. Let's go. I forgot to mention we have listener polls. Let's do that now, Katie.
Yeah, we do. It's been forever since our Howl's Moving Castle episode, but we did do listener polls and we did get some feedback. We got a little bit of engagement on Facebook, not as much as we usually get on the old book.
What they're calling it?
I don't know.
Okay, they're not.
I don't know what they're calling it, all right?
Nothing.
We got 3 votes on Facebook. 2 of them were for the book, 1 for the movie.
Okay.
And we had 1 listener comment. Alexis said, I think on its own the movie has merits that make it great and beautiful, but I definitely prefer the book. I think Sophie has a much better characterization and actually exhibits character growth throughout the story. Some parts definitely got lost in the adaptation, which is to be expected, but the shoehorning of the anti-war message into the story and subsequently combining a few characters into one made it feel muddled and difficult to understand motivations overall. Basically, I was most disappointed in the treatment of Sophie as a character in the movie versus the book. So it's a lot of the same things that we said. In our review.
You had a lot of similar criticisms.
Yeah. And then over on Twitter, we had a good bit of engagement compared to what we usually have. We got 15 votes. 9 of them were for the book.
That's wild.
6 were for the movie.
Twitter, I feel like, is usually like a movie winning platform because for whatever reason.
I was pretty surprised by the results of this poll go around altogether because I really thought the movie would take it, if only by virtue of the movie being more well known.
Yeah.
And like people seeing that and just like knee jerk. I love this movie.
That is what I feel like happens occasionally. Which we encourage you to feel free to vote for any
absolutely.
movie. But that does feel like, at least on Twitter, a lot of times that's what's going on. It's just people like, oh, I saw the movie, liked it.
Yeah.
I picked the movie.
Yeah, so this one was a little bit of a surprise for me. But you know what? I support you guys. I agree with you.
There you go.
So we had a couple listener comments on Twitter as well. At Dragon Babies Pod said, it's honestly hard for me to even compare the two because they feel like totally different creatures, which is fair. We'll never stop being delighted the movie exists, but I struggle to associate it with the source material because they take such different paths, which is also a very fair assessment.
Yeah.
At Minty Cell said, I was made to read the book in children's lit class in college, pick it apart, and ultra-analyze it. So the experience of reading the book will never be as delightful as watching the movie. Yeah. That always makes me sad when people say they had a book ruined by a class.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. There are plenty of books that I never want to read again.
Yeah.
But it is kind of like... womp womp.
Yeah, I can see if you have to really go through it with a fine-tooth comb for a class, it can definitely make some of the charm the luster fade on the, if you're kind of really...
Yeah, no, I have 2 English degrees. I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
But...
I mean, sometimes it can go both ways. You know, for some people that can make their enjoyment of something amplify, but, you know, some people that it's just like, oh, no thank you.
Yeah. And I'm going to give a couple things that Shelby said about comparing the book and the movie. We were messaging. She said, the dog's cute.
True.
I like its wheezing little bark, but the book one is better.
Okay.
The ending of the movie is bonkers random.
I'm glad she agrees.
And she also said, I feel like Miyazaki could have easily told the story he wanted to without bringing the book into it, and it would have been fine, which I totally agree with.
So almost just like a completely different, so not even the same characters, or it sounds like what she's saying, or...
I mean, yeah, I think he could have just told a completely separate story.
Set in like a fantasy type setting.
Yeah, set in a fantasy type setting, and it like would have been totally fine. Or even people would have liked it.
Or even maybe what she's saying is still keep it same characters and that sort of thing, but just like completely change the plot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could have potentially worked
like
too.
Use the characters and kind of keep some of the characterization the same, but like kind of wildly change the plot more so than they even did in the movie. Interesting. All right, cool. All right, that's it for our listener feedback. Thank you once again to everybody who responded, who voted, who sent comments or messages. We appreciate them all, and we love hearing from you. Let's move on. We have a learning things segment. Let's learn about steampunk.
Yeah, let's do it.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
Steampunk is a subgenre of speculative fiction, which itself is a subgenre of sci-fi / fantasy. So it's like a subgenre. And it also refers to the associated subculture, not just the
literary.
Yeah, not just the literary media genre. So steampunk is retro-futuristic. Being speculative, it leans on what if. In this case, largely, what if the internal combustion engine never replaced the steam engine?
Yep.
And away we go into an alternate universe.
I believe I heard Glenn Hetrick describe it exactly as that on an episode of Face Off. He's a big steampunk fan.
Yes, he is. Steampunk works are often set in an alternative history of the 19th century British Victorian era, or sometimes the American Wild West.
Hence Wild Wild West, if you've seen that masterpiece of American cinema, which has very strong...
I have that later in my notes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't read your notes. I'm sorry.
But here is a fun fact. The Victorian era is definitely like the more common steampunk setting, but the American Wild West variant is sometimes referred to as cattle punk. Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard that. Cattle punk. There you go.
So the setting is important because one of the most recognizable hallmarks of steampunk is its use of anachronistic technologies, which are rooted in the era's perspective on technology, fashion, art, etc., etc. Please note, everyone, that I correctly pronounced anachronistic this time. I worked on it.
Well done.
So we have that definition, or as American young adult author Caitlin Kittredge put it, it's sort of Victorian industrial, but with more whimsy and fewer orphans.
There you go.
So the term steampunk is actually something that was made up on purpose. It was coined by American sci-fi and horror author K.W. Jeter, who was trying to give a collective name to the stories that he, author Tim Powers, and author James Blaylock were writing in the early 1980s, which were based on the works of earlier authors like H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, some pretty common names in steampunk fiction.
Yeah.
The term is supposedly a tongue-in-cheek reference to cyberpunk, a genre which was saturating the media at the time. William Gibson, Neuromancer, that kind of thing. Jeter wrote that he thought Victorian fantasies are going to be the next big thing as long as we can come up with a fitting collective term. And they did.
Yeah, there they go. They sure did. So was there, I guess you're going to get into it, but was there the sort of boom of the steampunk, like, novel in the same, obviously Mortal Engines is one, but like in the same way as something like the vampire YA boom of like the early 2000s, you know what I mean?
I think steampunk is something, because I don't super get into a timeline here, because it's kind of hard to plot out, because it's something, at least it seems to me, like that has had like small recurring booms, but it's not like boomed in the way that, like you said, like young adult vampire boomed, or even cyberpunk boomed. It's had like kind of smaller spurts of boom.
Interesting. Okay.
Because there was a little bit of a boom in the like mid to late 1980s following these guys. And I don't know if you'll remember this, there was a little bit of a boom in like the early 2010s.
I don't know. I was probably not reading. That was around the time where I wasn't reading much, or like that was that was like right when I was in college. Like, and so I wasn't doing a whole lot of book, like anytime before that, reading tons of books and would have been up on that. But I wouldn't have noticed if that kind of.
And a lot of that was with like the more subculture aspects too. Like there was I do sort of remember the boom in the aesthetic. Yes,
of
in the aesthetic of steampunk.
More so than like the literary sort of genre.
So it has like
but I'm sure they kind of went hand in hand.
Soft booms every now and then.
Yeah.
It like cycles. But speaking of the subculture and the aesthetic, one of steampunk's more significant contributions from that perspective is the way that it mixes styles and genres. There's a focus on upcycling. It very much has this like DIY crafting makerism element to it, especially in regard to clothing and style.
For sure.
Visual hallmarks of steampunk include a focus on old-fashioned materials, brass, copper, wood, glass, ornate carvings, and of course, mechanical workings.
Gears! Give me them gears!
So many gears! And then especially for clothing and costuming, what steampunk does is kind of take the best Victorian styles and then combines those with more modern alternative styles, your goth, your punk, your burlesque, etc.
Yeah. But as Glenn Hetrick was quick to say on Face Off, steampunk doesn't just mean gluing gears all over everything, at least in his opinion. He was very quick to criticize anybody who just slapped gears all over everything whenever they had a steampunk challenge. He said everything should look like it has a purpose and a place because it is, at its core, in his opinion, when done well, like it's leaning into the... like you said,
it's leaning into that speculative nature
of like, these things are doing something.
Yeah. It's not just like, oh, these gears are really cool, so I'm sticking them on my hat. It's that they do something.
Yeah, it's that my hat has some sort of like mechanism that allows a little telescope to come down.
Yeah, I wind
whatever.
the gear and binoculars come down, or like a third eye pops out, or an umbrella comes out of the top, or something.
Yeah. But you can also just slap gears on stuff if you're into that look. That's cool. We're not going to gatekeep steampunk.
I mean, that from a purely aesthetic perspective, that kind of is how you achieve the aesthetic.
Yeah. Yes. If you just want to at a glance achieve it, slap some gears.
Got some gears.
And then age it up.
Yeah. Take
some black acrylic paint, mix it with a little water, and slather it over everything, and then rub it off. You're done.
Do you know we cosplay a little bit, guys? A little bit,
occasionally. Never done steampunk. I'm not super into it. It's all right.
I like the idea of steampunk more than I like actual steampunk. Yeah.
I think I would feel far too ridiculous wearing steampunk, and I wear lots of ridiculous things. But something about it, I think, like when I see people who do it and do it well, I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like I see why you like that, and I think it looks cool. But it's just not. I guess there's just other things that I'd be way more interested in dressing up as or wearing as opposed to like steampunk. It's just, I don't know. It's very low on my totem pole.
I could go for like a subtle steampunk maybe. But yeah, I think when it's really done over the top, I think, I would probably feel a little bit silly.
Yeah.
Which, much like you, is saying something.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's not as into it as other things, so.
So I have a few examples of steampunk media. There are obviously a lot of examples. These are just a few. So don't come at me telling me I forgot your favorite things.
Because you're right.
You're right, I did. This is just a very quick sample. So we have K.W. Jeter. We talked about him earlier. His Infernal Devices is arguably the book that started it all, and not to be confused with Cassandra Clare's The Infernal Devices, although that's also a pretty good example of steampunk fiction. The Difference Engine by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling. Extraordinary Engines.
I love these names.
I know, right?
So far. Devices, engines. Yeah.
Gears. Come on.
That's fair.
Moving away from literature into film, the 1954 film adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is kind of another steampunk hallmark. Wild Wild West with its giant mechanical spider.
Yep.
We'll put that into Cattlepunk.
Yeah, and there's a really fun story about why that spider's in the film that Kevin Smith tells if you've ever looked up. If you look up Kevin Smith, Wild Wild West or something on YouTube, you'll probably find it. He in one of his shows or something. He tells a story about how he saw what went through his head when he saw that in theaters and the story behind the whole thing. It's very interesting and very funny. But anyways,
and then my last example is the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I also want to say there are also plenty of examples of media that just use steampunk elements without going full steampunk.
Yeah.
Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials definitely has a steampunk kind of edge to it. Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes movies
absolutely,
are kind of a soft steampunk.
Soft, but there are elements where, especially with the sort of like contraptions that Sherlock and Watson use.
Yeah, and it's kind of a styled up Victorian.
Yeah, it's very much, it's Guy Ritchie's Victorian England, which Guy Ritchie's Victorian England is a little steampunk.
And then Doctor Who plays with steampunk elements and visuals quite a bit.
Yeah, every now and then there's an episode. There's probably one or two a season, I would say, that very strongly incorporate something sort of steampunky. Probably, maybe most famously is in the David Tennant run. It's a great episode. There's actually a Philosophers in Space episode about it. It's the only Doctor Who episode I think they've done so far. Is The Girl in the Fireplace, which is the one where they end up on a spaceship, and I can't remember which monarch it is. No, I can't remember. But she's they're in a spaceship, and there's like portals back to Victorian. No, it's France.
It's France. But it's
what's her name?
Madame Dupoisson.
Yeah,
or something.
Madame Dupoisson. But whatever her. Yeah. And there are clockwork villains in that are like these robots that are all gears and really cool looking and stuff like that.
The other thing from Doctor Who that kind of springs immediately to my mind is the episode where the TARDIS comes to life, and she definitely has a steampunk kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, a living TARDIS would, and especially during the Moffat era for sure. Yeah,
and especially an episode that Neil Gaiman wrote.
Yeah, that is a Neil Gaiman episode.
The perfect storm.
It is the perfect storm. Yeah.
So I have a kind of sort of homework here. If you listen to this episode, we're talking about steampunk. Go ahead and drop a comment somewhere on our social media and tell us what your favorite steampunk
You'll probably
media
make
is.
a post specifically just like, what's your favorite steampunk thing?
I could do that.
You should do that. That'll make it easier. That can kind of
I'll make a specific post. What's your favorite steampunk media?
Maybe we'll put ours on there, and then people can put
we want to hear from you guys. And
awesome.
Learn about what you like.
All right, that's your homework. Go follow us on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that good stuff. And tell us what you like, what you like about steampunk. If you don't like steampunk, tell us why you don't like steampunk. But mainly just go tell us what your favorite steampunk thing is. All right, Katie, speaking of steampunk, the reason we learned about it is because this week coming up, we're doing Mortal Engines. Let's preview the book.
I was 8 years old when my mother died. She loved traveling the world and digging up the past. He used to visit all the time. Now one day, everything changed. She'd found something. Something he wanted. He would have killed me too. But I got away.
So Mortal Engines is a young adult science fiction fantasy novel by British author and illustrator Philip Reeve. First published in the UK in 2001, so we're hitting that kind of Harry Potter era here.
Yes, we are.
It's also the first book in a series, the Mortal Engines Quartet. The title, Mortal Engines, is actually a Shakespeare quote. It's from Othello. The full quote... And oh, you mortal engines, whose rude throats the mortal Jove's dread clamors counterfeit. So we've got
said by Othello.
Yeah, said by Othello. So we have some Shakespeare in here, unsurprising. Philip Reeve has said that his plans to write this kind of science fiction novel started out back in the late 1980s, which is on track for when we said steampunk got its start.
For sure.
The original drafts were also apparently intended to be an adult novel, but after several rejections, Scholastic said that they might be interested in Mortal Engines as a children's story. Again, we're right in our Harry Potter era here.
They're like, what if? Let me, hold on, hear me out. What if this, but kind of like Harry Potter?
So... Philip Reeve, he had to go back and do a little bit of restructuring. So the story was simplified, apparently removed several characters, and some content, like some stuff about city politics that he thought kids might not be so interested in.
It's fair.
Probably a correct assumption.
Probably fair.
Mortal Engines was also originally written as an alternative universe set in the early... Well, that can't be right. 1900s? Oh, okay.
That's right, or that's classic
I got my
steampunk.
notes right. Yeah, I got my notes wrong. Okay. Sorry. Alternative universe set in the early 1900s because the actual book is like a way in the future.
Okay.
Dystopian.
Yeah.
I confused myself for a minute.
Gotcha.
But Reeves said that this ended up being like there was too much explanation required to explain just how that happened and where history diverged. It ended up being much easier to be like,
it's the future.
Way in the future, and some stuff happened, a lot of stuff happened, and here we are.
Sha-na-na, the future. Took care of that problem.
So Mortal Engines won a Nestle Smarties Book Prize, and it was also shortlisted for the 2002 Whitbread Award, as well as the ALA's Notable Books for Children Award in 2004.
Did it win every food-based award? The Nestle Smarties Award and the Whitbread Award? I know it's Whitbread, but I've never heard of either of those.
It was just shortlisted for Whitbread.
Oh, okay.
It didn't win.
It's like really cleaning up the old pantry circuit of awards there.
And Publishers Weekly also praised the book, calling it a staggering feat of engineering that offers new wonders at every turn. I bet whoever wrote that felt really clever about calling it a feat of engineering.
Yeah, look at them. They're like, I'm a critic. All right, that is it for our Mortal Engines book facts. Let's go ahead and talk about the film.
In the great game of survival, this is checkmate.
I knew you wouldn't leave me.
Shut up and run.
You sure you want to do this?
I have to. For my mother.
You look at her, and all you see are the jagged edges. But she is something quite different. She is beautiful and strange. And very, very rare.
Mortal Engines is a 2018 film directed by Christian Rivers. Christian Rivers storyboarded almost all of Peter Jackson's films. Well, did storyboard all of Peter Jackson's films from a certain point. But he also worked in special effects on pretty much all of them. So he was kind of working in the background with all Peter Jackson for years and years and years and years and years. Literally from like very early in Peter Jackson's career. He was a split unit director on the Hobbit movies and the second unit director on Pete's Dragon. But this was his directorial debut. This is his first feature film as the director. And Peter Jackson actually handpicked him for the project. He was like, I want you to do this. Because Jackson produced this film with his along with Universal Pictures. Jackson bought the rights to the book in 2009. Took some time for the film to finally get produced. I'm sure that a lot of that had to do with the fact that all of a sudden, I have to shoot the Hobbit movies. What the hell? Kind of sidetracked some of his other projects for a while there. But yeah, so he finally got back around to actually producing Mortal Engines in 2016, 2017. Film, this is where we're going to get into the reception of this film. The film has an aggregate score of 27% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not great. The Guardian's film critic Peter Bradshaw gave the film 2 out of 5 stars, describing it as, and I quote, steampunk Star Wars with a bit of low-octane Gilliam and Gaiman on the side, which sounds right up my alley. But
theoretically,
I mean, low-octane puts a little bit of a damper on the like the my optimism based on that review. But theoretically, that could be right up my alley. And I remember seeing the trailers and being interested. We never ended up going to see it, but I was interested.
Yeah. Well, I think, didn't we not end up going to see it because the reviews started coming out and we were like, maybe we'll watch this one at home.
Maybe we'll wait this one out. Yeah. The box office, and this is where it gets real sad. Mortal Engines grossed $16 million in the United States and Canada, and $67.7 million in other territories for a total worldwide gross of $83 million. Deadline Hollywood calculated that the film lost approximately $174.8 million, which makes it not only the biggest box office bomb of 2018, but arguably, according to the list on Wikipedia, after adjusting for inflation, it is the biggest box office bomb of all time.
That's a yikes.
Yeah, that puts it in the same ballpark with films like 2013's The Lone Ranger,
Yeesh.
Titan AE, which I actually like as a movie, but did famously bomb. Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, and most recently, A Wrinkle in Time. Philip Reeve, author of Mortal Engines, who we've mentioned, praised the film, stating, Christian Rivers has done a fantastic job. A huge, visually awesome action movie with perfect pace and a genuine emotional core. There are many changes to the character, world, and story, but it's still fundamentally the same thing. So he approved.
Stand by your man, Philip Reeve.
Standing by him, and we'll see if he keeps singing the same song years. When we come back now, that who knows when that was? That may have been like in the lead up. Like we got to get some good. Let's go, and then finally, that's all I could find because I don't think anybody saw this movie. Well, clearly nobody saw this movie, and there isn't a ton of I did more Googling and looking around for info than I normally do because normally I just find it pretty quick because I usually do pretty popular movies. I did some deep searching, and it was tough to find, especially which is especially strange for like a Peter Jackson sort of production because there's usually extensive sort of behind the scenes and making of, and so there's usually lots of trivia and facts and cool information. The IMDb trivia section is like 10 things. Ooh. The Wikipedia production section is like a paragraph.
Are we pretending this one didn't happen?
I think we're pretending this one didn't happen is kind of what's going on, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because I'm betting. Okay, so that's all I got for the movie facts. We're gonna wrap this up, but I'm betting that I like this movie. That's my guess going in. I could be wrong. Could get in and find it really boring. But I'm betting that I will enjoy this movie.
I think that's probably an accurate bet for you. I'm going to bet that I don't like it.
Yeah, and especially comparing it to the book, I think. Yeah. That could be fair. I have a feeling from what the reviews I've seen of what the problems are with the movie and stuff, I could be wrong. I may end up going, it was a mess. But I have a feeling that it's going to have the emotional sort of through lines that I'm looking for. It's going to have great. The aesthetic is going to be like, woof, I'm going to be there for it. Yeah. And it's going to have a lot of really cool, fun action sequences and stuff. And I'm thinking I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to like it overall. Maybe like a solid 6, 7 out of 10. Not like great film, but I could be wrong, but we'll see. But that's my expectation. That's what I'm thinking might happen. I don't want to say it's my expectation. But.
All right, so tune in next week.
Yeah.
To see if we're right.
Yeah, let me know, or not let me know. We'll see in 1 week's time if that is correct. We should mention that the reason we're doing this is because one of our $15 patrons, Shelby Suderman, requested it. This is her request for us to do. So if you're one of our other $15 patrons and you haven't thrown your request in, I think we've done all the ones we've gotten so far, right? But we have more $15 patrons than that.
We have one more from Shelby, but it's like a series, so we're going to have to figure out.
We'll have to figure that out.
We'll have to figure that out.
But we can put it on the back burner because we're doing the other one that she requested pretty quickly. But that is one of the benefits if you are a $15 patron is if you give us a request, we will work it in as soon as we can, realistically, to get that in there because we appreciate your support. And so, some of our other $15 patrons, if there's something you want to see us talk about, specifically, ideally, a movie that is based on a book and not like a whole TV series or that sort of thing. It just makes it more complicated. We haven't delved into TV. We haven't taken the dive into TV series yet. It may happen eventually, but...
Yeah.
We're holding
there are some things that are more realistic than other things.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Like Game of Thrones.
Right.
Not super realistic.
Not super realistic, but I'm sure we'll get to it one day. But not super realistic, at least in the short term. But if you're a $15 patron, make sure you send us that recommendation for what you want to see or what you want to hear, and we will try to do it as soon as we can. And for everybody else, that's a little bit of candy, a little bit of carrot to get you to come support us for $15 over on Patreon. All right, that's going to do it for this prequel episode of This Film Is Lit. As always, if you could do us the favor of going to iTunes or wherever you listen to us, primarily iTunes, give us a 5-star review and a rating. Huge help, helps bump us up in the recommendations and that sort of thing so we go out to even more people. You can also follow us on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads. That's pretty much it. Oh, we also have a subreddit. It's kind of not really active, but it's there. And that's going to do it. So until next time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.